And let's see, where's our go live stream? All right. So, yeah, we're just waiting for our go live. We're just going to go live right now because we are just a little bit before 12:30. Oh, actually, we are right on time for 12:30. Hey, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Boss Rush. And actually, yeah, let me go ahead and make sure I have all of these sites muted so you don't hear an echo back there. My name is Chris Melisinos. I'm the principal evangelist for video games here at AWS. And I'm so happy because we have the entire group, yay, back here for this Friday. At least for a little while, we have Susan joining us today. And this is Friday's Afternoons Boss Rush. We dissect the biggest game industry news of the week. And with me, as always, is Mr. Dean Takashi. Dean? You have, yeah, Dean. You're.
I couldn't either.
Lean in on that mic, buddy. Get that microphone hot. There we go. Now we got you. Yeah, that one should be awesome. Very good. And with us too is Mr.
Mr. Bowser.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, and of course, you know, the author of Game
Good
Programming
years.
Gems and worked at Nintendo and THQ and Google and a whole bunch of stuff. Mark is games industry royalty. So, and speaking of royalty, we have with us Susan Cummings.
Not royalty.
Yes,
And
Susan,
I
please
feel like I
introduce
never
yourself.
get to come here lately, so I'm thrilled because you're like all my favorite people. So I'm Susan Cummings. I've been in the industry for, I don't know, it feels like 1,000 years at the moment. This week, I feel very old this week. But I started 2K Games. I've got Tiny Rebel Games, and then I also have something else cooking that I'm not talking about too much yet as well. But some people have seen logos.
Yes. All right, very good. And yeah, it's great to see everybody too. Okay, and they said, yeah, just Mark. We can't hear Mark, so I don't know why. All right, very good. Yeah, and Noah Falstein says, oh, Noah's here, and Lee Scanny both said they couldn't hear Mark. Can hear me and Susan. We can hear Dean in the chat, right? Dean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Yes. Oh, they said super.
Lee says
soft.
super soft.
Yeah, let me see if we can adjust that. You all go ahead and start talking. Dean, why don't you kick us off and tell us what games?
It was a busy week with the election in the U.S., and we'll talk about the consequences of that for games. We also had many earnings reports this week. Nintendo, Sony, Take-Two, and Unity all reported their earnings. They're all generally doing pretty good, actually.
Jesus Christ. I was wondering if that was a very like veiled way of saying they spun it out like a management buyout sort of thing. But Tom Bass left there like last year, and I always think of Tom as being like the guy behind it. Didn't
Uh,
realize he left. I don't
uh,
quite know who's at private division anymore.
I don't know if is it still Michael Rose, I think is his name. So
Hmm.
he was one of the leaders that got it off the ground, and
Yeah.
it had been going since 2018. So 6 years in now. But Strauss Sonic has been saying that it's been increasingly difficult to get new intellectual property off the ground. But he always said at the same time that that's sort of the way you get uh, fresh ideas into the industry, and uh, you're always searching for the new hits. So
I think, I think
yeah.
that the problem. I mean, look. I mean, it's near to my heart, right? Having been there at the start of 2K,
Mhm.
and I talked about this at an interview I did last night. It was different back in those days. Like we did stuff like we shot from the hip. Like BioShock was like Ryan wanted to do it, I wanted to do it. Couldn't really show a P&L that made sense, but we knew that Ken really wanted to make the game and wanted to make follow up to System Shock. So we're
Uh-huh.
like, fuck it, let's go. And we bought Civilization a week after we found out it was for sale. Borderlands was a verbal pitch. Like Take Two doesn't do deals like that anymore. Like there's no one there with the courage to just say, Mark was around me back then. We did the same thing with Brain. Fuck it, let's go, let's sign it. And I feel like it's a big problem in our industry on the game publisher side is that everyone's just too focused on a P&L. And like there's no instinctual, let's just do it because X, Y, and Z anymore.
Yeah.
It's all CYA because as the costs have gone up into crazy stratospheric numbers, everybody's gotten super risk averse, right? So making those decisions is even tougher. And there have been in the past there have been new platforms that have popped up that have been lower to produce on, whether that was handhelds or mobile or social. At the moment, even BRAR for a while. I don't know where right now. There's really not a platform like that. Everything's expensive.
Yeah.
I mean, one thing they do have is they have Zynga at Take-Two, and they've got a hot new game called Match Factory, which is taking off. So, on the mobile side, it definitely is easier to create these new franchises.
Isn't that funny though? Because, well, back in the day, not to be controversial, Strauss Zelnick said that mobile games were a scam. Isn't it funny that that's now more than half their revenue? I'm just saying.
What are you doing holding people to account, Susan? Jeez.
I'm just like now. I'm feeling all spicy this week about everything.
I wonder why.
Doesn't seem like where it comes to the indie end. Like if you look at the stuff that works on Steam, none of it has anything to do with a big publisher. It's always like 2-4 people, cool idea. They worked on it for 10 years. They get something, the rest of us don't, and it works. And so maybe it's for the best that the big publishers stay out of it and just buy these companies later, give them an exit, and just let them do their thing until then.
Yeah, I mean, look, the minute you start getting big money that moves into that moves into games, and especially when you're a publicly traded company, I mean, then it's no longer just the art you want to put out there; it's the art that investors are going to want to see, right? And so, while it's great, but that also complicates some of the matters a little bit, right?
Yeah.
So, you all keep going. I'll be right back.
Okay. One of the interesting things with Nintendo is that the first half sales dropped 34%, and the Switch is showing its age. It's a plus 7+ years old, and so they mentioned the Switch 2. They didn't name it yet, but the Switch 2 is coming, and they acknowledge it's going to be backward compatible. And as Switch sales sort of drop off, it makes sense for them to launch the Switch sometime next year. They haven't said when. They said they'll announce it before March, but no telling when it's actually going to drop. And so that's definitely interesting. PlayStation Pro units are getting into the market now, and people are reviewing them.
Yeah, we've seen them pop up. Yeah, we saw them pop up on a bunch of feeds. I think friend of ours, Christian Svensson, was just like, "Oh, so happy I got mine too," right? So we're starting to see them out there in the wild.
Yeah, I picked it up in the warehouse.
And Sony's results were actually pretty good. They were up 12%, from a year ago in Q3, and then they have. They credited third-party games, and there weren't tons of third-party games they called out, but Helldivers 2 at this point has sold 12 million copies. And by comparison, Astrobot, which everybody was talking about, has such a big game. It's sold 1.5 million so far since early September. And then Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut has actually sold 9.7 million units since July. So that's, it's all good for Sony. Sony's profits in the game and network division is about 48% of the entire company's profits. And the Sony Pictures division is actually losing money right now. So interesting.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah. Interesting.
Now, we mentioned hardware quite a few times already, and I think one of the consequences of Trump being elected is that he's planning to follow through on imposing tariffs on foreign companies selling things into the U.S., and that's going to hit game consoles. There's a nice story on Gizmodo that reminded us of a report that the Consumer Technology Association did in October on the effects of a 60% tariff on consumer electronics. And long story short, something like the PlayStation Pro, which costs $700 now, could spike up to $1,000 in such a tariff realm. So it's going to hit all the game consoles as they are not manufactured in the United States. Right? So for a 40% increase in the cost of consoles is going to be a gigantic headwind.
Is the tariff supposed to be as high as that? I hadn't realized it was as significant as I knew it was a bad thing, but I didn't realize it was as crazy as that.
Yeah. I mean, they're assuming like a 60% baseline tariff on all Chinese exports.
Wow.
Into the U.S. So
at the same time, we're going to cancel, the Chips and Science Act investments because that's fucking brilliant too. We can't import stuff and we can't produce it at home. Think through the strategy a little before you talk.
Yeah, there was a nice interview that NPR had with a manufacturing CEO in the South who had to tell his staff, all of his workers, that he could not give them a bonus this year. And in fact, he had to use all of the company's cash to buy a lot of inventory right now before January 20th, before Trump gets into office. So before the tariffs could ever go into effect.
Right.
And the factory workers, had voted as they voted, and they didn't understand, like, why is this happening? And they didn't understand how tariffs work, which is tariffs are not paid by the other country. Tariffs are imposed on the products as they come into the U.S. Those manufacturers raise their prices to cover the cost of the tariffs, and then the U.S. consumer essentially is the one that pays for the cost of the tariffs. And they didn't understand this.
Hold on a minute, Dean. You mean the companies just don't absorb that extra 40%? The consumers
correct.
Have to. Oh,
they can absorb it, but they also,
of course, not.
Most likely are passing it along.
Of course. That was a little sarcasm. I don't know if that came through there. But yeah, and that's the problem, right? Is not thinking through these things. Although back in the day, you're going to want to have two jobs to get a console.
There's things like international, trade law that's going to get in the way of some of this, and there's also just reminders of the Great Depression when we had tariffs that really helped bring the country down.
Yep.
Yeah, the counter argument, which is the thing that you hear, from people trying to defend them, is that we didn't used to have an income tax. The taxes generated for the government used to be generated by tariffs. I don't know if that's true, but that's the counter argument.
Okay, so the reality is we don't know yet, right? So
we don't know yet, but it seems stupid.
Okay.
I think the next 4 years we can pretty much say that about anything. Catch all.
This is what you're gonna get from me for the next 4 years, by the way.
Yeah, exactly.
No, it's a disaster of epic proportions, in my opinion. So, CTA also
come to Europe. The water's fine here. Come to Europe.
CTA says
can I sponsor to come to Europe?
So a laptop's going to go up 46%. Smartphones costs will go up 26%. Game consoles 40%. So the top of the line GPU will go from $900 to $1,300.
Well, here's what I would offer. Given that we were just discussing about investors' influence on the creation of our art form and those types of things, if the environment becomes too arduous for companies to navigate, I expect that there would be pressure to figure out how to counteract some of that. So, no crystal ball here. It just feels directionally like that's a set of forces that we haven't seen execute yet, because none of those plans have executed yet. So definitely something to watch. It's something that we'll go ahead and make sure that we touch on as we go forward. But yeah, let's jump ahead to some other stories here. Dean, you have one up here on the front of GamesBeat. Former PlayStation Worldwide chairman says the future of the industry no longer belongs to the big players. A conversation that happened with Sean Layden at your conference, right?
Yeah. Sean is always, a very interesting thought leader, I think, and he's continued to be so. One of the people I liked a lot because he was so talkative and so very insightful. And we've lost a lot of that in the industry. The companies are being so careful about how they talk. But Sean is an advisor now. He's no longer part of Sony, and he gets to share his opinions. He's very worried about things like AA games, not getting funding, and really not doing as well. But he does also sort of point to things like Helldivers 2 and Power World as the kind of games that are more sustainable for the industry to make.
Yeah.
The AAA arms race is really something that he doesn't think is going to work.
Yeah, I mean, look, I kind of agree. And we talked about this before on the program here, where, with the costs pushing AAA and Quad 8 just into the stratosphere, what is going to fill that gap there? It's going to be smaller games, shorter amount of play time in those, and that I feel kind of aligns with the way we're conditioning consumers of other forms of media to operate, right? Smaller form content, binge watching, multiple, TikTok feeds, all these things. So as consumers are starting to acclimate to having more stories, more moments of engagement with the same allotted time that they have, why wouldn't it stand to reason that games are going to follow suit, right? So that's why I think next 3 to 5 years, it's going to be massive ramp for indies and smaller companies that are creating those types of bookended experiences.
Well, two things. That kind of brings us back to where we were in the coin-op days, right? A quarter's worth of entertainment.
Yeah.
How much your 25 cents.
Exactly.
And also, and I totally agree. I think that, the small end, because there is no middle ground right now. Like you said, you either have GTA money or you are making stuff for Steam, essentially. And so I think that there'll be a trend of micro teams who, figure out how to validate quickly, really engage with the community early on, with an MVP, use that early access for what it was actually for, as opposed to just another way of getting to use it to get user feedback.
Yeah.
And lean into things like generative AI. figure out how to keep your processes lean. I think is the only way to work alongside that.
Yeah. Speaking of generative AI, that's what Mike Verdu, the vice president who was in charge of all of Netflix games, is going to be focused on. He announced this week that he was going to be vice president of generative AI for Netflix games, and so they're leaning into that for sure.
Yeah. I think everyone's going to have to. I mean, it obviously was full of both sides of the spectrum. The replies to Mike, were a mix of "that's awesome" and "screw you," which I think we're going to see a lot of that for a while when it comes to generative AI. It kind of sounds like early Web3, doesn't it? Like the reactions to it. But look, it's not going away. We can stick our fingers in our ears, but it's not going away. And I think the better discussion.
Gen AI specifically?
Gen AI, it's not going away.
Of course not.
Unlike Web3, which you could argue kind of is going away. But generative AI is so pervasive, and it's so clear what the value proposition is as opposed to blockchain that I think, I talked to some students last night about it. I'm like, don't be afraid of it. Figure out how to lean into it. Figure out how your skills work alongside it as opposed to saying, screw you, AI.
Yeah, Susan, I couldn't agree more. And I just gave a talk last night at George Washington University in D.C. on the games industry and future tech and all this stuff, and basically said the same thing. Stop trying to replace people. Start trying to augment people and their workflows. Stop trying to replace creativity and figure out how you create tools that enhance creativity, right? So it's a nuanced thing, but this is what happens anytime we get new technology at our fingertips, right? We're pushing the boundaries, seeing what can be done. We just have to make sure that our unconscious bias doesn't play into how we propel some of those tools and technologies forward, Mm-hmm.
And
right,
I
didn't
just saw
the entire conversation to a screeching halt. So,
No, I just wanted to.
Well,
what Noah said. Noah Falstein's in the comments saying that like it is useful to development in 1,000 ways, and I think he's totally right. There's a lot of behind the scenes, under the hood stuff that can be done that even the artists are embracing. I've found our art director iterating, really well on things like, Midjourney as a way of saving time on trying out some ideas before having to go all in on it. And so, I think it's really clear. It's just a question of ethical use cases and how far we, push these things. Sorry.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. There was a company that I think we mentioned last week or the week before, this company, Crikey AI, led by these two women that are sisters. They're brilliant. And what they've done is they have created an AI tool that allows you to do kind of rigging based off of video. And so you can get all that the skeletal stuff stood up and everything else. Then you hand it to an animator to let them animate it correctly, right? But it takes away all of the important but undifferentiated pieces of that workflow and automate it. That's great, because now you're just giving animators the ability to spend more time animating and less time basically rigging and connecting to skeletal models, right? So, yeah. Oh yeah, we have an early morning radio DJ soundboard. That's exactly right. We do. All right.
I had more fun just looking at some of the charts Nintendo posted this week, and all about some of the history of the Switch. Really.
Oh yeah, let's definitely pull that.
They've sold 146 million units so far. Compare that to the PS4 at 117 million. There's 127 million annual playing users now for the Switch. That's still been going up. 34 million Nintendo Switch online players or members, and Pokemon across 9 games on the Switch has sold 99 million units. The Zelda games, the 2 Zelda games, 53 million units. Super Smash Brothers, 35 million. Animal Crossing, 46 million. Splatoon's 2 and 3 games, 26 million units. So very awesome. The Super Mario Brothers movie, 1.3 billion at the box office. They got another was it Mario title and a Zelda movie coming as well.
Yeah.
And 4 theme parks now for Super Nintendo World.
Nintendo doesn't need anybody. I've always laughed about this. Nintendo doesn't need third party. You know, they're absolutely fine.
The third party is huge for them. Like they
but they don't need it, right? Yeah. Like they could just laugh about third party.
Yeah, they've got everybody now essentially making third party Switch games, and they said that the Switch 2 is going to be backward compatible, so that's going to be good for all those companies.
Yeah. How is the new game? Has anyone played the new Mario game yet? I've heard mixed things, and I haven't picked
Which
it up
one?
Yet.
The Mario Party one, or
the Brothers?
The Mario Brothers one, yeah. IGN really hated it, like really slammed it. So I was, yeah.
Interesting.
I'm not sure why. I haven't actually read the article.
Listen, crew, I don't understand how these numbers are possible. I mean, the only way Nintendo can compete is if they make hardware more powerful all the time and get away from design and sensibilities that they have. These numbers, like, no, Nintendo is just, Nintendo does what Nintendo does. And, look at that. That's an old, what Nintendo don't, right? Or Genesis of Nintendo. But, it's, you know, and Mark really, when Mark and I first met, we had a discussion around this, and he really impressed upon me, gosh, and this is going back like 24 years ago, that, Nintendo's approach is, hey, we're Nintendo. We do stuff the way Nintendo does it. Just the fact that everyone else is jumping in to compete with us, we don't see it as competition. We're just Nintendo. We're just going to continue making stuff that we love, right? And it just comes through in the design choices they make, the art choices they make. It's extraordinary, you know. And congrats to them for the success too. It's an awesome platform.
I'd be interested to hear what Mark thinks about this, but I thought when they announced the backward compatibility for the Switch 2, that this would mean that they would stay with NVIDIA. You know, NVIDIA provided the Tegra processor and SoC really for the Switch, and that's ARM based. And I'm assuming they don't want to pay the cost or the tax of emulation, right? And so nobody really wants to do that. And so if you were switching, you know, to something like x86, then you would have to do emulation, and you would be overpaying for your hardware just to be able to do the emulation. And then Nintendo just really doesn't do that. Like they shoot for $250 or $300 consoles, right? And they never put the top of the line hardware in. And who would sort of, you know, waste that hardware on emulation as well, unless emulation is so easy to do now, because the chip advances are so large, say between 7 years ago and now. So I'm just not sure, but my guess is that this has got to be an NVIDIA Tegra based thing, using the same architecture, using ARM, and that's still going to be some kind of low cost solution that Nintendo comes up with.
If they're going to go with the Switch 2 being backward compatible with Switch, then I'm guessing it's going to be a really similar form factor, right? And if it's a similar form factor, you need to be able to pick it up and take it to go. There's no way you're going to use x86 because there's just no. I'm not aware of any good solutions out there that are conservative on power draw that are x86 that you want to put into a handheld device.
Right. That's exactly.
I guess there is the Steam Deck, but I don't know whether that's getting to be too high end, I guess, or too costly, right?
I don't know. I haven't had a Steam Deck in my hands here, but my belief is that they're heavy and hot and have a small battery life. And none of those things would line up with.
Okay, but I will say in defense of the Steam Deck, it is probably the best Gen 1 hardware I've experienced in a long time.
Yeah, I heard it's great.
And look what it did to everybody else. It made everybody else jump in and create a handheld PC. AMD and all these other companies came in. Yes.
I don't know if I've seen any of those.
Oh yeah, there's at least 5 in the market from different companies,
They
all
sold at least,
basically
like,
competing
10
with the Steam
units?
Deck. Huh?
How
No,
many
no, no,
units have
no.
they sold? Really?
one
Oh,
here.
Mark.
I have one gathering a bit of dust right now, but
There you go. You
Right.
sure that's not a Wii U?
Oh my goodness, what is going on with Mark today?
I told you it's gonna be a week, man.
It is going to be a week.
Saucy.
yeah.
We're seeing what's Mark Saucy Delora.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, and emulation is pretty awesome on those platforms too. But yeah, the emulation.
I gotta
mode-
dash off. I'm
Oh.
gonna love and leave. I'm sorry. I can only stay for half tonight.
Well, we were so glad to have you here today.
I'm glad to be here.
Listen, thank you for joining us today, Susan. I know
Thank
there's
you,
a lot of other
guys.
stuff going on right now, and hopefully we'll be able to dig into that
And
with what
chaos.
you're focused on over the coming weeks here. So
Yeah.
looking forward to
Have
it.
a great weekend, everybody.
Thanks so
We'll try.
much. Say hi to the fam, and we'll see you next week.
Enjoy not
Bye.
being in U.S. politics.
There you
Yeah.
go.
Absolutely. I'm trying to stay off on. I deleted my Twitter, by the way. I took it off my phone and I
Oh, my
logged out. So
It's probably
yeah,
the right play.
That felt good. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Bye, guys.
All right. See ya. Bye bye. All right. Yeah, so we have a couple of comments here. Handheld that burns you is not usually a favorite for me. Okay, yes, it can burn you, and people. Valve at one point was warning users not to smell the exhaust fumes. They're like, stop smelling. It was a thing, and it does. It's. I've done it too, where you're like, oh, that smells like technology. So yeah, it does run a bit hot. Somebody said, all I found myself doing with its emulation, but then I picked up an analog pocket and haven't picked up my Steam Deck since. Yeah, it's a great emulation platform, but I mean, it delivers on its core functionality, which is if you're playing on a PC, you can jump off and play a vast majority of the games that you want to play on the go. And you got cloud sync between it that works. Like, it's a good device. It's a really good device, you know. And then we also have here thoughts on the 3s from Meta. Got mine 2 weeks ago. I'm in love.
Yes.
Express One News. Yes.
Yeah, I haven't had my hands on a 3S yet. I'm very curious about it. To compare it against the 3, see the performance differences.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have not gotten one either, and it's interesting hardware and very interesting that they can still keep pushing the price lower. A few $100 now is a pretty good deal for this kind of technology, I think, and so it means that Mark Zuckerberg is still willing to subsidize, the cost of these VR headsets to get them more widespread into the market, and to stave off any gains that Apple might make. The Vision Pro. So, I think it's maybe it's appropriate, I guess, that they still name it a 3 as opposed to a MetaQuest 4 because I do think that they've been introducing technology at a faster than normal pace, and the Valve folks said that they haven't decided to do a Steam Deck 2 yet because they don't see the value that they can bring to consumers with just another new device, right? And so they want to see the technology advance farther and faster before they replace the Steam Deck with something else. And that that's probably a nice sort of notion that they're thinking about the consumer, and we're not just here to milk the consumers for every dollar they can give us.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw in here, first of all, on YouTube, Michael Ladat says, hey, running late crazy week games beat was fantastic. Dean, loved celebrating your birthday with you. So that's from Michael over there. So thanks, Michael.
Wonderful. Yeah, thanks to everybody who made it there for sure. And we had 577 people come, so it was bigger than last year's event. And
that's awesome.
Having that happen in the economic climate that we're in right now for games, I was very grateful to see that. And it was happened to have my birthday fall on the the first day of the event, and people sang "Happy Birthday" to me 3 times during that.
Awesome.
It's the biggest birthday party I ever had.
Oh, I love that.
Oh, that is awesome. Well, that's because everybody loves you, Dean. And well deserved. And then Noah in the LinkedIn chat said, I just got my 3S this week. He avoided both the 2 and the 3, so the upgrade from Quest 1 was stunning. Yeah, I mean, look, the 3S, same processor, same pass-through cameras and resolution. So games are going to look equivalent from the 3S to the 3, right? Same processor and everything. But it's those Fresnel lenses versus the pancake ones. Wider field of view, don't have those concentric rings, clearer at the edges, and the depth sensor, the LiDAR sensor stuff that's missing from it. So it remains to be seen, just how much you're going to miss some of that stuff, right? But going to those pancake lenses and then going back to use my 2, I was like, oh no. Yeah, but you can't go wrong. Either the 3S or the 3 is going to be awesome. And I do feel like this is what I was mentioning in the talk I gave last night. This feels like the headset that opens the market wider, right? Because they've gotten really good at the experience, low friction to get started, good battery life for the product, great performance, and the pass-through on it, the Vision Pro is not 7 times better than the pass-through on the Quest 3, even though it's 7 times more expensive. So you very quickly get very used to the fidelity of the pass-through on it, and that makes playing XR games actually awesome. So I'm loving it. I'm absolutely loving it.
I think it's a good play for them from the perspective of having invested so much money. And Christmas is rolling up here, and it looks like Apple's not going to have a device that's consumer-friendly pricing. So this is great to have this device out on the market.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm a little in the question of what the games are that are going to sell the device.
Batman.
So they came out. It comes with Batman. So I haven't tried Batman, but on the VR has had a hype curve, and now it's coming into the flats, and so it's going to take some serious marketing to keep it moving this Christmas. So I hope that they're up for that and they do that.
Yeah.
I'll keep my fingers crossed.
Yeah. But I was reading an article where some reviewers were saying the Batman VR game is not just the best VR game, it's the best Batman game that's been done. Which is really good, right? That's going to drive some interest. But I also think Spaceship Home, that sells XR immediately. It is so freaking good. I'm blown away by how good it is. Blown away by, and it was so surprising. I think I mentioned it last week. There was this one point where there was something glowing on the panel in front of me, and I was like, "What's it doing?" And it had this hologram display where it dimmed all the lights in my office, and you saw this holographic display of the universe that you're in, and you could walk around it. That was extraordinary, just amazing. So if you want to sell somebody on it, Spaceship Home is the way to do it.
Nice.
The way to do it for sure. Yeah. Yes. Love. Okay.
Another piece of news that was fun to see this week, that is Amazon MGM is going to be making a Mass Effect TV show. And it's being written by one of the Fast and Furious writers, Daniel Saga. And yeah, it's the kind of thing we can expect more of as we, get very successful shows like Fallout, which had 17 Emmy nominations. So Mass Effect for the Mass Effect fans is coming.
Did you see that they were going to kill off most of the branching experiments? The video.
Yeah, the Netflix stuff, the choose your own adventure style.
Oh yeah,
that kind of bummed me out.
Yeah, I think Bandersnatch was the only one they were going to keep, right?
I think there were
Netflix,
4 or something out of 12.
Yeah, 4 different interactive titles, right?
Yeah. It's like at the same time as we're doing this big embrace of games into linear media. I'm like, oh, why don't we do more of that?
I believe that Amazon has more. I mean, Netflix has more up its sleeve, but it sounds like it's not going to be so much of that future.
Yeah.
I think. So I'm still curious. What's the thing they're bringing to games and TV shows. Uh, but but yeah, there's things in the works that could be very interesting.
Yeah,
maybe that's
I
where
mean,
Mike
look,
Purdue comes in.
minute for minute, hour for hour, filming one of those interactive ones is like filming 5 other shows, right? Because you have to do all the branching paths, you have to go ahead and do set resets and all these other things, and that may not monetize well over time. So I do know that Bandersnatch, which was the best, but let's face it, right? The people that it was targeting were already primed for that. Like the plot was perfect for that, and I did love it. The whole thing about Pac-Man being in the maze, and that's how we all are. That was a bit of a stretch, but it was good. All of the little nods to down the rabbit hole, right, and following the white rabbit and all of that stuff. That was great, but then it was really hard to get people to engage in a lot of the other ones. And it could very well be, surprise, surprise, television is passive. Maybe it doesn't need to be interactive. Right? Choose your own adventure books were great when I was a kid, but that doesn't mean that I necessarily want to choose my path when I'm reading,
I don't think we're
in a series.
we're not really. We don't have to worry about linear media going away. It's just it's just an option.
Yeah.
What I get sad about is somebody who innovates and then decides to stop innovating.
I agree. I
Our
agree with that
innovation
100%.
is going to be
Yeah.
we're just going to shoot more content.
Yeah.
You know what? I've got too much content now. How about trying some new stuff? I mean, I get excited about what Mike Purdue deciding he's going to concentrate on generative AI stuff.
Yeah.
I'm like, great. Some new things can come out of that. And if he's also applying what he learns to the linear side of the house, Netflix is very linear focused, then maybe we'll see some more interesting shots.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think it's awesome they did it. Noah actually typed in here, I heard that Bandersnatch cost almost as much as a full season of Black Mirror to produce.
Makes sense,
Wow.
Right? Yeah, that's a lot. So I get it, but I did love it. In fact, I do this game night with industry folks. You both have actually joined at different points, and we did Bandersnatch one night. So we were pumping it through, OBS, and we were playing it together as a team, and it was great as a game. It was great as a game. I did love it.
Like fun, yeah.
Yeah, I did love it. So, all right, what other big news items do we have here?
Right.
Anybody else that's listening in, go ahead and type in what you want us to either talk about or cover, or what did we get wrong? Let us know.
I just published our fireside chat with Neil Stevenson from the GameSpeak Next conference, and that was a very fun conversation. Neil's he's got a new startup that is focused on AI. It's called Wheneer, and it's a sort of storytelling assistance engine for ordinary people, and so user generated AI assisted games and other stories, and they're starting in the universe of Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, partly because there's no copyright on that anymore after a couple hundred years here.
Yeah. Also, I do want to point out that when Dean says he just published, he literally pushed this while we were talking. So this is Dean is doing double, triple work all of the time.
Yeah, that was a very fun conversation. We had another scientist on board, Riz Verk, that helped me quiz Stevenson, and so that was a good combination, I thought.
Yeah. I had the chance to meet him actually 2 years ago when he attended your conference. I had a chance to talk to him backstage about that, about where we're getting the concept of the metaverse wrong. And if you read Snow Crash, right, and it's a story that's like, be careful, this is not the future we actually want, right? But it's the problem is that we honed in as an industry on the visual layer of this, but not all of the 8 other things out of the 9 that he describes the metaverse to be. Right. And he's like, yes, we're missing all these other pieces. It's not just floating around in VR, with an avatar, there's more to it than that, right? It's a mutable identity through mutable spaces, whether that's 2D all the way to full, 3D. So it'll be interesting to see how we, continue to progress down that metaverse road as an industry and as a society, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No. We did ask him about Snow Crash 2 or Snow Crash movie, and he said that's all really up to like Paramount, which has the rights to the movies, and so it didn't sound like there's anything imminent there.
Or he's really good at covering it up,
Yeah, he's working. He's working on other things. Like there's his Polo Stand book just came out, which is about sort of the pre-atomic bomb era, and I'm in the middle of reading it right now. It's very, very interesting, and I don't know. He's still very active with a lot of things going on, and he was exhausted at our event because he had been on his book tour. So I don't know. But yeah, it was nice to
his book tour and broadsword fighting, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is awesome. Right? Wasn't he making that a broadsword like fight game years ago? And
oh yeah, I don't know what happened to that one.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know. Yeah, the warnings that had to come with it were were pretty dire, right? It's not just flashing lights and stuff on your screen. Yeah, this is a broadsword, so don't give it to your 7-year-old.
Nice.
Oh, Stephen Reese says, suddenly all my ads are for Quest 3. I blame you people. Okay. Yay, we're doing our job.
Yeah.
Oh, my. All right. What other big news pieces are...
I'm stuck on something. So JP in the comments, I don't know if he's still with us, made a comment about the amount of VC funding given the size of our industry being small. And it made me stop and think, I don't really know what the proper size is. So compared to an industry that's not established but has a lot of promise, like generative AI, of course, that generative AI is going to be a lot higher. Crypto, Web3 was a lot higher. Games were high for a while.
Right.
I think during the pandemic, they've come down. EdTech is probably in that same boat. But it feels like something that I can understand that it would be lower because it's a more established industry. I don't want it.
I think, I keep close tabs on it. I mean, it is starting to go upward again, but there are definitely lots of stories out there about entrepreneurs who can't find their next round of funding, and that when there was a boom in the game VC category, starting I would say 5 years ago, everybody was getting the small first rounds, and the VCs were funding people in tranches, and a lot of that shifted into things like metaverse, and then cycled over to Web3, and then now it's cycled over to AI games, and they're not getting the next big rounds. I think also that 5 years in, some of these funds will have difficulty getting their next batch of limited partners for their second funds, and so if they're out of money now, then it's a challenge for them to get more money at this point, and so there are 75 identified folks who have made investments into game companies, and how active they are right now, it's a little hard to tell. But in the last quarter, the game investments did go up, so we are sort of climbing out of it. It's just not sure when we reach a steady state, where we're going to be. And I think we're still waiting for the home run, game VC investment into a game startup that is very successful.
Yeah. Well, I mean, remember too, VCs, right? What they want to invest in is something that's going to accelerate quickly, have a higher rate of return, and then establishes a base for long term. So versus VCs coming in to focus on a particular game for funding, it's focusing on revenue producing mechanics of a particular game or genre or idea, right? So it kind of aligns, Mark, with I think probably, with the way you're thinking about it a little bit, if I may be so bold, that, yeah, they're not investing in games, they're investing in the opportunity a particular game or style or mechanic or service has in market. So it would stand to reason that that's not where you're going to get the money, right, to do these things, unless it's highly competitive,
It feels a little bit more like a film financing model. Makes more sense for a lot of types of games.
Yeah, agreed. Absolutely agreed.
Project
And Bowser agrees too.
Bowser does agree, although he's really bored by our
I hear that snoring. Oh my goodness.
There is interesting data that came out of Amir Satvat again, who keeps all the sort of game job resource information and has been able to get a lot of data out of that. He's got like 22 months of solid sort of stats that he's been collecting now. And he noted that, say, a game job develop or a game person looking for a job has about a 16% chance of getting a job in the game industry after 22 months of searching. And that's not so great news, but the sort of the better news is that the chance of that person finding any job, including a bunch of jobs outside the industry, by months 12 are 54%, and by months 22 it's 71%. So that means that people are marketable. The game people are marketable with skills that they can apply into other industries. And so it is interesting advice, for people that, like, if you're underemployed or if you're not employed, finding a job outside of games is a good solution if you are still looking for that ideal game job to come along. But the numbers are always, fairly harsh. And yeah, we've seen 33,000 layoffs in the last 2.5 years. And hopefully we're crossing over into more hiring and less firing by something like December, according to Amir Satvat.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much different our industry is than any other industry in tech, right? With some of those things, and people having to look to adjacent, adjacent industries or stuff to, as people are losing their jobs in other segments, right? I don't know what the data is there, but I have seen, as people that have been in the games industry for a while and not being able to find place, and they are looking to other places that can leverage video game technology in those other sectors, right? Medical, automotive, robotics, right? Those sorts of things. We want to keep people, though, in games. And it's a big, messy, complex thing to have to deal with. And I'm grateful for our industry, for our community, and the community on LinkedIn, and for Amir's just tireless work in elevating those discussions and finding opportunities for people. Like he's just an extraordinary person.
Yeah. Very cool.
Well, I was going to say, Dean, with regard to some good numbers that popped up, Sega's half-year results driven by a 22% rise in games revenue. So it's good to see Sega on, solid footing. I think net sales were down 4.5% year on year, but their entertainment content net sales were increased 16.4% year on year, and the game segment sales was up 22% year on year. So Sega seems to have found that stabilized place and continue building on that, which is great. Sega's extraordinary company, brilliant people there, wonderful properties. It's good to see that they are again found footing, right?
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, they got the Sonic the Hedgehog 3 movie coming in next month, all right?
Yes, yes, and I love the fact no, crazy Sonic teeth, right? In those, in
Yep.
those, really fantastic. All right,
Yeah.
what are the other big things that we're missing? Mark, is there anything that's top of mind for you?
Nope, 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 nope. There's little bits and pieces of this and that, but nothing really big came out that I think we're missing.
Okay, Dean, how about you,
Uh,
buddy?
just the Unity results, maybe we haven't really talked about
Yeah,
those.
yeah.
They
Okay.
had
Here too.
a decent quarter. Their revenue fell 2%, but it's at $429 million for the quarter. It was above where they guided analysts to, and so their stock sort of did a bit of a seesaw, but it was upward. And Yeah, I think they sort of did their mea culpa again for the runtime fee price increase, and they're shifting everybody over to traditional price increases. They're getting good adoption for Unity 6 now, which is out in the market and is what they say is the most stable version of Unity that they've ever shipped. And so the new CEO, Matthew Bromberg, he's talked about how they're sort of redoing their feedback loops so that they get much more feedback before they do things like make a price increase that everybody hates, and that they will continue to sort of ship things in a way where the developers get very battle tested technology. So
Yeah.
and they're making headway expanding out into other kinds of design beyond games. So like the Dutch airline KLM and then Deutsche Bahn, the railway company, are using it to build different simulation applications. And yeah, I think their outlook looks respectable as well. And they do they are making heavy investments into AI.
Yeah. Look, and I think that's great. We need unity. We need, a healthy ecosystem of technologies that we can, and communities that we can lean into. So just keep, Unity folks, great job. Just keep on, improving that and, be here for the long haul. There was a piece of news that popped up that we're going to park for next week because there was a couple things that I saw pop up over the past day or so about cloud streaming of games. And the interesting one was GeForce now has now established a 100-hour play limit per month to their game streaming service. So now the question becomes, is that an audience thing? Is that GPU accessibility thing? Is it, how does this stuff work? I also saw an article about somebody claiming that they're going to be able to do cloud streaming of games over airplane Wi-Fi. So, yes, I need to dig into more of that before I proffer an opinion. But, yeah.
It makes me wonder if they're equipping all the airplanes with Starlink. And
Yeah. Well, I think that actually is happening. As Starlink is starting to be integrated in as a next generation network.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting.
Yeah, the interesting choices you have is like for the GeForce Now membership, like you can get your basic rig for free. They have this the new GeForce performance level at $10 a month, and it's something like 8 CPUs or eight was it 8 core CPUs or I guess and 6 hours per session. If you're playing for free, you get 1 hour per session, and then there's an ultimate for $20 a month that's ad free, and it has very short queue times, 8 hours per session, and the highest end GeForce technology. So
yeah, it could be interesting. It could be again, I need to look into it, but a play of saying, hey, use this to taste and experiment and play this stuff, then download it onto your device and play it locally, right? Which is the way we've seen some of those happen before. But like, I know we're up against the hour, so before we go ahead and get out of here, why don't we talk a bit about what we're playing? So, Dean, you want to share with our audience what you've been playing?
I've been not playing a ton, but I just have to say more Black Ops 6. And in multiplayer, I had one game where I went 31 and 10, which is pretty good for me.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, awesome. That's right. All right. Well, yeah, keep getting those stats up. Mark, how about you? What are you playing?
I am playing the post-election mental health game. Which is,
yes.
offline.
Okay. So basically, you're talking about cozy games then. Is what you?
Yeah,
Lots of cozy games.
Yeah,
a lot of bento box games.
Outside of Japanese language-related games for learning, I haven't been playing much this past week, sadly. But I will get back into it for next week.
Awesome. Well, I haven't been able to play a whole lot this week either, but I can't get out of the grip that Digital Eclipse has on me. They just released new DLC for the Atari 50th collection, and it's called the First Console War. So Atari actually picked up license for a bunch of Intellivision titles, and so they've now done a release with all of the M Player or the M. Or what is it? The M Studio, or basically it was the Intellivision versions of games on Atari 2600, and they just released that whole DLC. So that's what I'm going to be playing today on Rewind. We're going to go dip back into the very first console war and experience Intellivision games running on the VCS and explore, the collection that they have. So it should be, it'll be a lot of fun for me. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, go ahead and join me over in the AWS for Game channels on YouTube and Twitch at 3 o'clock Eastern. But that's going to take us up to the end of the program. I want to thank Dean and Mark and Susan for joining us today. And have a wonderful weekend. And we'll see you next week on Boss Rush. Thanks, gang.
Thanks. Play some games.
Yes, go play some games. Please, please.